Then let's start. So we will just do the 5 precepts on page 3. Homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened One. Homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened One. Homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened One. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dhamma. I take refuge in the Sangha. For the second time, I take refuge in the Buddha. For the second time, I take refuge in the Dhamma. For the second time, I take refuge in the Sangha. For the third time, I take refuge in the Buddha. For the third time, I take refuge in the Dhamma. For the third time, I take refuge in the Sangha. I undertake the precept to abstain from harming living beings. I undertake the precept to abstain from taking what is not given. I undertake the precept to abstain from sexual misconduct. I undertake the precept to abstain from false speech. I undertake the precept to abstain from intoxicating drinks and drugs that lead to heedlessness. Okay, you can put this aside now. So it's great Bhante Sankecha is also participating today. We can also learn from him during the discussion. The discussion will start, as we agreed last time, we will discuss about the discourse on non-self characteristics, the Anatta-lakkhana Sutta, which is the second discourse delivered by the Buddha. And this is the sutta that made enlightened beings after the Buddha. So the first sutta to enlighten people after the Buddha's enlightenment. It was after delivering this discourse that the 5 ascetics became completely enlightened. So I wanted you to know the background of the story of delivering this, because it has some interesting pieces that may be helpful to us before we begin the original discussion on the sutra. And we all agreed to discuss this sutra because of a question that came last time about non-self, and this time we don't know what questions we will have, and depending on the questions that may come, we will choose a sutra for the next discussion. So the story comes from a different sutra. The background of this sutra comes from the Majjhima Nikaya 26, the Noble Search, Arya Pariyesana Sutra. So in that, there is an account about Buddha's awakening, and he is thinking not to teach. He thinks that nobody will understand this teaching. And then a divine being, a Brahma being called Sahampati, approached the Buddha in his divine presence and bowed to the Buddha and said, "There are people with little dust in their eyes in the world, and they will be able to understand your teachings. Therefore, out of compassion, please teach to them." So then, with the Buddha's divine eye, he searched through in the world and found out that it was true, that there are people with little dust in their eyes. So it would be better for him to teach the Dhamma compassionately. So that is how the thought to teach to people occurred for him, and the background of that little story. And then he was thinking of whom he will teach this teaching for the first time. he contemplated on two previous teachers. One of them is Anatta-lakkhana, from whom the Bodhisattva, the Buddha to be, learned the seventh attainment, and then when the Buddha looked for him from his divine eye, found out that he has passed away 7 days ago. So the Buddha could not teach him because of his present state was in a formless state. So the Buddha could not approach to that. I mean, there was no way he could receive the teachings from that place. The second one, the Uddaka Ramaputta, the Rama's son, he has passed away just one night ago, the Buddha found, and therefore the Buddha could not even offer the teachings to them. The reason for the Buddha to think about these teachers is because they have come almost very close to a state of awakening, which also helped the Buddha in his process of awakening. So these teachers were very close to it, but because they have already gone, the Buddha could not teach them. And then thirdly, these 5 ascetics came to the mind of the Buddha. They were helpful as when the Buddha was going through extreme ascetic practices. These 5 also liked that kind of practices, so they started helping the Bodhisattva in that 6 years of period when he did self-modification practices. These 5 brought him food and also encouraged him to reduce eating to the point that he stopped completely taking any food. But there came a time that the Buddha realized that this is not the path for awakening, so he abandoned that practice. As soon as he abandoned that practice, these 5 friends stopped helping him. They abandoned him as well. They complained that the Bodhisattva went into a luxurious path. And this is where the Buddha says in his first discourse, not this one, the first discourse, that these 2 extremes should be abandoned. One extreme is going through extreme suffering to end suffering. The Buddha said that doesn't work, as he did it himself and found out that it wasn't helpful. And the other one also he enjoyed himself was the practice of indulging in sensual pleasures. As a king born to a royal family, royal prince, not as a universal monarch, but as a king to an area in that Indian subcontinent, he enjoyed so much luxuries, more than the ordinary people at his time, and he knew that that path also wasn't going to lead him to the path of awakening. So having seen these 2 ends, he came up and said, follow the middle path. Take food when it is necessary, but don't indulge in it. And follow the middle. In that middle path, he taught 8 aspects. And I think we can bring that discourse into a different discussion, and then go from there for an understanding about the 8 aspects of the middle path. I'm sure you must have heard these already, but we can discuss that at a later time. So now I'm moving to the discourse on non-self characteristics. This is found in the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses of the Buddha, and this book has been translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi in the year 2000, and the sutra is found in page 909. In the Pali style, This is also called Panchavaggi Sutta because this was delivered to the 5 ascetics. The names of the 5 are Kondanya, Vappa, Bhaddiya, Mahanama and Assaji. These 5 were the 5 friends who helped the Buddha. When the Buddha found out that these were the ones to teach the Dhamma, he started approaching to Uruvela, where these, people were living at. And the exact place where they were living was the deer park in Isipatana. And as they saw the Buddha coming, they said, "Friends, here comes Gautama, the contemplative, living luxuriously, straying from his exertion, backsliding into abundance. He doesn't deserve to be bowed down to be greeted by standing up, or to have his robe and bowl received." That's how you pay respect to a monastic visiting you. So then they said, if he wants to, he can sit down anywhere he likes. But as he approached, they were unable to keep to their pact. One, standing up to greet me, received my robe and bowl. Another spread out a seat. Another set out water for washing my feet. However, they addressed me by name as a friend. And the Buddha stopped them. So I said to them, don't address the Tathagata. Tathagata means the thus gone one, someone who has gone in a certain way toward the path of awakening. Don't address the Tathagata by name as a friend. The Tathagata friend is a worthy one, rightly self-awakened. Lend ear, friends. The deathless has been attained. I will instruct you. I will teach you the Dhamma. Practicing as I instructed, you will in no long time reach and remain in the supreme goal of the holy life, knowing and realizing it for yourselves in the here and now. This is still in the discourse on noble search. This is where we find this background. When this was said, the group of 5 monks replied to me, by that practice, that conduct, that performance of austerities, you did not attain any superior human states, any distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of a noble one. So how can you now, living luxuriously, straying from your exertion, backsliding into abundance, have attained any superior human states, any distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of a noble one? They questioned. Even after the Buddha saying that he was the awakened one, they didn't believe him. When this was said, I replied to them, Tathagata monks is a worthy one, rightly self-awakened. Lend ear, friends, the deathless has been attained. Second time, the third time they argued with him. They didn't believe him. And then the Buddha said, do you recall me ever having spoken in this way before? In a convincing way? They said, no, you haven't spoken this way before. So then I was able to convince them. I would teach 2 monks while 3 went for alms. And the 6 of us lived off the 3. The 6 of us lived off what the 3 brought back from their alms round. Then I would teach 3 monks while 2 went for alms, and we all lived off what the 2 brought back from their alms round. So this says that I would teach 2 monks. We don't have these teachings in the canon. These are personal teachings given to them. So he would keep 2 monks with him, and the 3 others went on alms round. And so we still, we don't find these teachings. That is why we do interviews for people in meditation retreats. We don't just give a talk and ask you to meditate. We ask you to come close to us and share with us the progress you have made. And that way you can get instructions closely, like these 5 ascetics did. And then the Buddha says, the group of 5 monks, thus instructed by me, being subject to themselves to birth, aging, illness, death, sorrow, defilement, seeing the drawbacks of birth, seeking the unborn, unbinding, knowledge and vision arose in them. Unprovoked is their release. This is the last birth. There is now no further becoming. This is how they became awakened themselves. This is still the noble search discourse. So how they escaped has been explained in a simile. Because I liked it so much, I copied it here. I wanted to share that with you. And this is the escape they did. Suppose that a wild deer is living in a wilderness. Carefree it walks, carefree it stands, carefree it sits, carefree it lies down. Why is that? Because it has gone beyond the hunter's range. The hunter's range for us is the sense, indulging in sensuality. So when you have gone beyond those places, because there is don't be negative, but there is, as you know, there is no stopping in the indulgence of sensualities. Those people who have more still want even more. This never ends. So when you have gone beyond that range, a monk quite withdrawn from sensual pleasures, withdrawn from unskillful qualities, enters and remains in the first jhana. This is a safe place to be at. And rapture and pleasure born from withdrawal, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation, this monk is said to have blinded the evil one, the Mara. The evil one is now blind. He is not able to catch this monk. Trackless, there is no way he can find the path where this monk went to. He has destroyed the vision of the evil one and has become invisible to the evil one. So the evil one is not merely a person here. It is mostly your own mind that deludes you, and when you go beyond the evil one's periphery, he is not able to catch you. But this evil one has been explained in different ways, like a divine being, like a human being, like your own defilements and different states of the mind. And that, I think, it depends on what difficulties you face in life, and accordingly you are able to understand. And currently we say that the world is under the control of the evil one, so the evil things happen. And I think these teachings are also found in other religions, like in Christianity. So then they say that a savior should come and save the world. This is a common dialogue in the world. So, okay. Now we will start the discourse on non-self characteristics. So in the first one, this in Buddhist discourses, you find three characteristics in the worldly existence explained. The three characteristics are the impermanence, suffering, and non-self. So impermanence is quite permanent, quite visible in the world, and suffering is taught in the first discourse delivered by the Buddha. And non-self characteristics is taught in this discourse. And when the first one, the turning of the wheel of Dhamma, that's the name of it, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. When this was taught, one of the 5 ascetics, Kondanya, realized that, this must be the path, this is it. But he was not completely awakened until this discourse was taught. And all the 5 became enlightened after hearing this one. So, characteristic of non-self. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Varanasi in the deer park at Isipatana. There, the Blessed One addressed the monks of the group of 5 thus: Monks. Then they replied, saying, Venerable Sir, the Blessed One said this: Monks, form is non-self. For if monks' form were self, this form would not lead to affliction. Affliction here means suffering. If it is your form, it would not lead to affliction. And if it would be possible to say, let my form be thus, let my form not be thus. But because form is non-self, form leads to affliction. And it is not possible to say, let my form be thus, let my form not be thus. Just by saying or intending, you are not able to change the direction of the form. Form here is F-O-R-M, Rupa. This is basically the 4 elements, the earth element, fire element, water element and air element. In other words, this is basically your body. Your body, you cannot say that this is, be it this way or be it that way. Sometimes when you are sick, you tend to think that it's you who is sick, but it's in real sense it's not. It's just this body. When you visit a sick patient, we usually ask, how they are doing, which means we are asking how their body is doing. Sometimes we also guarantee that, when someone is sick, the doctor would say, I'll give you just 1 month to live. And one of the patients, was given just 1 month to live, and he said, I won't be able to pay the bills in 1 month. So then the doctor said, I'll give you 2 months then. This body can be, estimated to certain time frames. And I think we hear this from people at different times. So it's not just the form. Then the Buddha says feelings. So the discussion is about the 5 aggregates. So we are discussing about these aggregates that make a person. So form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, consciousness. These 5. And for each of these, the Buddha says, feelings is non-self. For if feelings were self, these feelings would not lead to affliction. And it would be possible to say, let my feelings be thus, let my feelings not be thus. Because feeling is non-self, feelings leads to affliction. And it is not possible to say, let my feelings be thus, let my feelings not be thus. And same with perceptions. Perceptions is non-self. For if monks' perceptions were self, this perception would not lead to affliction. And it would be possible to say, let my perceptions be thus, let my perceptions not be thus. But because perceptions is not non-self, perception leads to affliction, and it is not possible to say, let my perception be thus, let my perception not be thus. Volitional formations are non-self. For if monks' volitional formations were self, these volitional formations would not lead to affliction. And it would be possible to say, let my volitional formations be thus, let my volitional formations not be thus. But because volitional formations is non-self, volitional formations leads to affliction, and it is not possible to say, let my volitional formations be thus, let my volitional formations not be thus. and consciousness is non-self. For if monks' consciousness were self, this consciousness would not lead to affliction, and it would be possible to say, let my consciousness be thus, let my consciousness not be thus. But because consciousness is non-self, it leads to affliction. It is not possible to say, let my consciousness be thus, let my consciousness not be thus. This is a simple logic. This is the first logic, and the sutra has the second logic. What do you think, monks? Is form permanent or impermanent? These monks definitely know that this body is impermanent. Impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? In other words, when you have something impermanent, does it bring suffering or does it bring happiness?
Suffering.
Usual answer is, if it is permanently there, this form, this body is permanently there, we like it. But because we know that we have an expiration date, we try to get all the degrees as quickly as possible, get PhD by 35, get a car by this age, get a house by that time, and because of that we try to get all the promotions as quickly as possible and get retired at a certain age and enjoy the life afterwards and die. This happens so quickly. This is the nature. So there is this hidden fear that we will die, in a road accident or earthquake or falling from a cliff or just tripping on something, or all kinds of ways of ending life. So this body is so fragile that it can leave us anytime. So I will go back to this question. What do you think, monks? Is form permanent or impermanent? And they say impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering and subject to change fit to be regarded this way? I'm saying it again. Is what is impermanent suffering and subject to change fit to be regarded this way? This is mine, this I am, this is myself. They say no, Venerable Sir. So he then repeat the same formula about feelings and perception, volitional formations, consciousness. So I will go to consciousness, the last part. Is consciousness permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering and subject to change fit to be regarded that this is mine, this I am, this is myself? No, Venerable Sir. This is clearly evident. Therefore, monks, any kind of form whatsoever, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all form should be seen as it really is, with correct wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Any kind of feelings whatsoever, any kind of perception whatsoever, any kind of volitional formations whatsoever, any kind of consciousness whatsoever, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all consciousness should be seen as it really is with correct wisdom. that this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Seeing thus, monks, the instructed noble disciple experiences revulsion towards form, nibbida. Revulsion is nibbida, that you are not going to stay, clinged to it. Revulsion towards feelings, revulsion towards perception, revulsion towards volitional formations, revulsion towards consciousness. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate, viraga. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge it is liberated. He understands, destroyed his birth, the holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. That is what the Blessed One said. Elated, those monks delighted in the Blessed One's statement. And while this discourse was being spoken, the minds of the monks of the group of 5 were liberated from the stains by non-clinging. That's the end. We have about 24 minutes for the Q&A, as you requested that we have more time for the discussion. So this is fairly short when we discuss it this way, without repeating the same parts again and again. And we now need to know that these monks really were, withdrawn from the society when they lived. Unlike us, we are living in the society. We have TV sets at home, we make phone calls, we have Facebook accounts, we are in the world, honestly speaking. So for them, this worked instantly because they were prepared. Their minds were ready to listen to this. And definitely, the ascetic Gautama lived with these 5 monks for a long time, enough to know what they really needed to hear. So this was like the Buddha knowing the illness and knowing also the right remedy for that illness. So it worked for them. And this happened progressively as the Buddha gave a discourse on dukkha, the 2 extremes, and the middle path. So in a way, the right view has arisen in them. The view on what is suffering and how it originates, and the cessation of suffering and the path towards cessation of suffering. And they knew that, wow, what a truth. This is true. We have never heard of this before. So let us invest our minds in this kind of practice and find also the way toward the deathless, so that you stop being born again and again and going through the same cycle of birth and death and birth and death. This happens to all the sentient beings. You will be born in animal realms, in heavenly realms, and spirit realms, and human realms, and lower births and higher births, and all kinds of places, depending on how you lived this current life and what your last thought was at the time of your dying. And none of these things are under our control. So there is a danger in that. When you see the danger there, we try to buy an insurance. The insurance is the practice. How far you have practiced help you to go to a better realm or not go anywhere. As the Buddha encourages, when someone is dying, the Buddha says, set your mind in the good things you did, and then maybe detach from that. Set your mind in heavenly realms, just this level of the heavenly realms, and then free your mind from there. Set your mind in that heavenly realm, that's even better, and then bring that mind slowly to detachment out of compassion, so that that person will find unbinding. not clinging anywhere else in the cycle. So, questions? Yes?
Isn't happiness also impermanent?
Absolutely.
Oh.
You've been happy and you have again been through painful situations.
Yeah.
That same hour.
Right.
Sometimes. Right. So just imagine a mom who's delivering the baby and there's tremendous pain, and then as soon as the baby is born, tremendous pleasure. Two extreme ends right there. Yes.
You had mentioned the middle path, the lack,
The two extremes.
so the excessive indulgence, the complete lack of everything, and then the middle path.
Yeah.
And then a little further on, we talked about the expiration date on our physical self and the suffering caused from that.
Yeah.
Is it okay? I personally experience now joy in my suffering, knowing that I am going to die, and I could die tomorrow. But up until right now, this very moment, I've had a great day, a great life, and I find joy knowing that if I were to pass away at any point in time, I found happiness. So is it wrong to find joy in suffering?
It's your perspective towards suffering, and I don't think that there's wrong understanding in there. That's how you see it, and that you have lived a good life, that you know that you are dying, but you are still happy that you lived your lives this way and you are kind of ready, and there's nothing wrong in there. I would add something to this understanding of your suffering, that it's not just limited to what we just discussed. It's not about dying. It's the very impermanence that's happening momentarily, right here, right now. That we cannot change. As we become conscious on one thing, and then suddenly we become conscious on something else. Consciousness arises and passes away. So seeing this nature, that's just one example. There is this teaching that the Buddha says, it's like your head is set on fire. Make effort, right effort, to end that fire. Extinguish the fire. Thank you. Extinguish the fire, so you are able to cool yourself and be happy that this death will be the last death in your cycle.
What way do you exactly enjoy that suffering? Like, in what perspective, what aspect?
I'm not afraid of dying. The concept of not being here. Like, that's what I was understanding, that the
how can you say you are not afraid of dying? What guarantee you have?
As I feel right now, if I were to pass away for any reason, I am.
But you don't know the dying process, right?
This is true.
How
There's
do
a
you
lot of
know?
things that I don't know.
Nobody knows here,
Okay.
right? So that's a good question. Actually, it's really interesting. What I was thinking actually in this practice, when you begin to realize this nature of impermanence, that how any of these conditions does not belong to you, when you realize this reality, what happens to us, actually these two unique qualities can happen to us. By seeing that reality, you begin to somehow able to let go. How you do that is you reduce that attachment, knowing that reality, the impermanence. You let go of that. You're ready to let go, just like you said. You are ready to let go of this at any time. Likewise, with any condition, anything in your life, When you have that understanding though, not just by being emotional, you know, when the right understanding of these conditions are there, we are ready to let go of any condition. And at the same time, because of that letting go of quality, at the same time, we become able to accept. These two unique qualities actually go hand in hand. Now, when you letting go something means you are ready to accept any conditions that arise within this moment. So these two qualities are there. So what I thought was actually, when you have this understanding, this very special knowledge, that knowledge itself becomes something that you really enjoy. Not just the suffering itself. You know? It has to be the wisdom that you appreciate, you know, not just the pain or the suffering part. Because of course we know it is suffering, it is painful. There's nothing to enjoy in that suffering, you know. But the real wisdom, when you have this understanding, there's nothing like that. That type of happiness, relief, bliss even, we can compare it. You know, it has to be that way, I think.
That is exactly, that's what I was trying to explain. I don't enjoy any of the suffering, but the detachment, like I'm no longer, I will be sad for that I won't be able, not sad, I will understand the pain that my friends and family have to go through, and I don't want that to happen to them, but it's going to happen. But I don't know, I no longer cling to that, the attachment to that. I'm able to just, you know, enjoy the day and just realize, like you said, if I were to move on to the next life, I'm okay with that. So I don't find the joy in the suffering, but the actual acknowledgement that I'm able to detach. That's what I would say. That's the joy that I find.
Right. So when it happens to us constantly, you know, with our direct observation about these circumstances, this is what exactly eventually happened to us. It becomes a joy, something you really appreciate and enjoy. This knowledge, this understanding, wisdom.
Yeah, but I think that of course a lot of people, they are not afraid of dying because they know one day they will go there. But little things like little momentary things like how about my today meals, how about my vehicle. So momentary lot of suffering underlying, I think, because that's why you are trying to do those things, isn't it?
Yes, the more possessions you have, more worries you will
That's
have.
if you have enjoy, you need to maintain that enjoyment.
That is true. So people suffer, but still there is this underlying fear anyway that you will die if you do this. People say that all the time. Don't put yourself in danger. Just be careful. Don't go there. So hold this. So people, when they fall, they feel like, oh, I nearly died. So that's the first thought that comes. So there is some sense of wanting this life to be permanent, this life to not go wrong, not die. But people slowly, gradually age and come to this place that they know that they have 1 decade or 2 maximum for them to live. So especially when you come to age 100, there's no guarantee that you are going to live 150. So I think I will know it more when if I ever go to that age. So as I'm saying this, there's uncertainty whether you are going to live that long.
To be very very technical here, since this is a learning class, I'd like to explain this. It was mentioned like in the discourse, the word, the term, the deathlessness, right? So this is something actually Buddha discovered, you know. When you think about all religions, they all talk about the deathlessness, because we know ultimate problem we all have. Even though we have everything, we know everything is going to be end one day, sooner or later. So, in a way, all religions came to be within this question, to find a solution for the eternity, how to remain without dying, So Buddha also, actually, his journey was also with the same purpose, because this is how he started his journey, living in the palace, observing the suffering in human life, like getting old, getting sick, and eventually dying. He wanted to find a way out, or in another way, the way to deathlessness, So this term is used even by the Buddha, okay? But when you think about the deathlessness taught in other religions, many other religions is very different from what Buddha discovered in here, okay? The other religions, deathlessness is explained like being in heaven, or how do you explain that? Being with the God, with this entity, supernatural entity of the Creator. This is how they believe that they reach their deathlessness, the permanent existence, or to be totally in happiness. Okay, so this is commonly what we can see in many, almost every religion eventually teach. But what Buddha discovered was totally different as the deathlessness. As it explains right here within this sutra, discourse, this teaching, this particular term, the self actually is can be explained as in a very practical, simple way, is actually to personalize. How we are conditioned to personalize our experience, everything. Okay, if you analyze that sutra discourse, these 5 constituents of this experience, form, feelings, perceptions, formations, and consciousness. So this is actually our personal experience within this body and mind. So if you take one channel, like the sensual experience, what we feel, what we see, what we hear, within this each process, eventually we create this perception. We get caught up in this illusion of personalizing this process, everything. And that itself becomes me, myself, and mine. Okay? So Buddha clearly explains in many discourses the problem of that perception. When you personalize something, it becomes a thing. It becomes something, an object. And this is exactly our body. In this Buddha's teachings, this is what we feel as I, me, myself, this body. This is exactly what we call the Sakkaya Ditthi. We strongly personalize this body to be me, myself, or mine. That way. So what happens when we personalize something, it becomes a thing, a matter which occupies the space, right? Which has these measurements, all measurements, right? The weight, the height, and depth, all these conditions. And when there's an identified object like that, or entity, it has an existence. It has an existence as it began, or which had a birth to that entity, and there's an end for such an entity, and there's a continuation for that process, right? So all these conditions are arising right from the point of personalizing this experience, this process, every entity. So as a result of seeing these 3 characteristics explained in the Dhamma, impermanence, suffering, and non-self, when you completely let go of that personalizing or identifying, that is the way to let go of all these conditions, Buddha says. If you let go of that personalizing, that person is exactly free from birth, aging, and death. To technically explain, For you to die, you must exist before. Okay? If you are not existing as a person or self being, who is there to die? Technically, this is what Buddha realized as the deathlessness. It is not just stopping dying or anything. It is just the realization of that there is no one to die here. You know, it's a very subtle, complicated, tricky, challenging process. But this is exactly where this process ends. Possibly anyone can end all the suffering. You know, all our practices, meditation, all these reflections are pointing actually to this direction. So we have to completely understand this difference, distinction between Buddha and other religions, how they approach the deathlessness. You know, it's very interesting. It's exactly in line with this discourse. That's why I wanted to mention that.
That's a perfect explanation.
So there isn't a person to die to
Yeah,
begin with.
exactly. So it is all an illusion that we have personalized all these experience. That's why we suffer. You know.
I think what we have done maybe because of the five senses, and we have seen and we have sensed, smelled and tasted and experiences the touch or feeling, whatever. So, and got those objects into a subject view,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe we made a lot of I will say stories inside the mind, keeping the good ones, maybe the familiar ones, it goes to the past and come back again to the mind and making more and more stories. So maybe that may be the one we get a lot of mental formations or thoughts.
Yeah. That's exactly how it happens. Proliferations. We have some memory and then we proliferate, prapancha. Also because of the view that there is a self. That this self is the one who is thinking, this self is the one who is doing all these things.
So in actual speaking, probably no self.
Yes.
So all the
So this
forms
really
are made out of.
Very important to realize, I think, as it is explained, this perception of self is an illusion. It's very important to understand how it is an illusion. Why is it an illusion? You know? I always use this example to explain that non-self reality. We are doing it. You know, I always take this example of turning your flashlight. You know, as you speed the process up, what you begin to see, right? You begin to see a circle of light. So, is there a circle in reality? No, right?
Right.
There's no circle. You know that. But what created that circle?
The motion.
The motion, exactly the motion. The light, the motion of the light created the circle. And there's no circle in reality, but we can see every single spot. There's a light, bit of light. When these dots are connected, it's in an illusion, we get that circle of light. But to see that reality, what do you have to see? To prove that there's no circle.
Stop.
You have to stop that or slow the motion down.
Slow the motion.
Right? But then you begin to see that there's every single dots everywhere.
Just like
Created.
the light bulb.
Yes,
Mhm.
it is the continuation, right? So it is exactly technically what we are supposed to be doing in order to see that reality. This perception of self is created within such a rapid movement within this five faculties, five senses, emotions, feelings, sensations, all these dramas. When everything is functioning so rapidly, It's very natural for us to feel that perception, you know, that there is somebody is existing within this story who is handling all these things. You know, it's very natural to feel that way. But exactly, technically, these rapid movements actually, our habits mostly, all these things actually have created this illusion. So to see that reality, what you have to do is the same technically. Possibly you have to completely stop or slow the process down. And that is exactly what we are talking about in meditation. Slowing down this process. Enlightened ones are the who completely stop this process and saw that reality for themselves with the direct knowledge. You know, so that is technically how this practice is related to realize that non-self reality. So it's very important to keep in mind how this concept of self is an illusion, you know, created illusion, which has no real existence.
I think the Buddha said that I think it's maybe related. Buddha said to Angulimala, "I have stopped," even though he was walking.
Right.
But I think that
some
sense is there,
sense
and
are
you
there.
are still running or something. So,
Exactly.
So, yeah,
I have stopped. When will you stop?
yeah.
Also, this discussion.
Right.
Page
If you don't have questions.
6, please. And for the next discussion, we will pick the discourse on turning the wheel of Dhamma, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra. So let's read the Gatha in English. The avoiding of evil, the doing of good, the purification of the mind. This is the Buddha's teaching. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.